Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Buzzin podcast, episode 2. I know it took a little while for me to get the second one out, but today I'm joined by Antony, aka The Projekt. Say hello.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy.
So I wanted to have a discussion, basically, because there's a lot of recent events, and I had this idea like probably a week or two ago, whenever this actually happened, about the idea of internet sports. So I kind of wanted to talk to that a little bit. Antony hosts his own show related to esports, Overwatch League specifically, so I thought you'd be the perfect guest.
Thank you.
No problem. So go ahead and say a little bit about what you do. I know I talked a little bit and spoiled it, but you can go ahead.
No, not a problem. Well, that's not the only thing that I do. So yes, my name is Projekt. I am a host for a couple of things. The first is I host a weekly Texas-based Overwatch League podcast called TexasWatch, which you can find on twitch.tv/The Projekt. That's Th3 Projekt, because I spelled it weird when I was 16, and I don't know why.
Get that plug out of the way early.
Oh, of course. And I also am a host for the third tier of professional esports, Overwatch Open Division. We are currently running through the European and North American teams, as well as China and South America. I am a host on the North American broadcasts.
Nice, yeah. I tried to catch one of those. I think they were like GGEZ, I think was the one that I watched.
Yeah, that was a fun game.
Yeah, for sure. I did play an Open Division at one point during the second round of it.
Nice.
So I have a little bit of experience of that. I'm sure we'll talk about that specifically. And I know this is kind of like a separate topic from esports. Esports is going to be the primary thing here. But the fact that the Overwatch League, the All-Star, like the games and the primary, like the mini games and stuff like that, those happened on the same day as the KSI versus Logan Paul fight, which is something I personally watched. I really enjoyed. I know a lot of people said it was rigged and it was like a whole shit show. I mean, I personally feel like I got my money's worth on it. But yeah, so what do you know so far about like the KSI and the Logan Paul stuff? I know you didn't watch it or have much on it.
I still looked into it. I mean, I heard rumblings of it in the forthcoming weeks up to the fight, so I knew it was happening, but I was like, eh. So then after, because like you mentioned, it was actually going on during an Overwatch League event, so I kind of was focusing on the Overwatch League side of things, but I looked into it afterwards, and I mean, I personally am not a fan of Logan Paul. I don't really agree. I don't agree with how he operates, what he kind of stands for. But I understand he has a huge fan base, as well as KSI, who is the European Logan Paul, from what I read, essentially.
It's not too far off. Yeah, I know he started with a lot of gaming stuff. I personally, for the record, don't watch either of them. Obviously, I find what Logan Paul has done in the past to be obviously very disgusting.
Abhorrent?
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And of course, this is his way of kind of getting back into the mainstream. I mean, you can't expect somebody's career to just die, per se, like no matter what shitty people do. Obviously, it's kind of like his way of his apology stuff, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, one thing I will say, I did notice when it comes to Logan Paul just in general is whenever you have somebody who is very polarizing, someone who does a lot of really shitty things, let's not cut it nicely, they previously have fans, and when you have fans, your fans sometimes will stand by you regardless of what you do. I mean, look at the amount of celebrities out there that get caught in these scandals of doing really shitty things, and then their fans are just like, oh, okay, so sure, maybe that person will get some really bad news for, say, a week, a month, or maybe it'll follow them for their whole career. Tiger Woods. But no, like, I feel like the people who have that huge of a fan base, you'll lose, 20% when you do some horrendous things. A lot of people are still going to stay loyal, and it's kind of unfortunate that that's how it is, but that's just how it is.
No, I completely agree. And what was I going to say? I mean, again, I don't watch Logan Paul content. It's not my thing, of course. Logan Paul and Jake Paul have even gone out and said like their demographic is essentially like 9 to 12-year-olds. So obviously we're not in that. Nerd City actually put out a pretty good video recently. I don't know if you saw it, but like it was all about Jake Paul for like 45 minutes and how he runs his merchandising and his advertising, and how it's basically not broadcast standard for children because it's like 80% advertisements for his stuff. So I by no means watch their content. I do recommend the Nerd City video, but I will not ever like really say that they're not good business people by any means.
Yeah,
they know how to make
money. It's true. The people who know how to make money tend to be some of the most vile people out there. I mean, look at our president.
Political. But
can't help it. I had to make the jab. I had to.
And you're not wrong. But not to get into it too much. But Nerd City, he talked about like how he's advertising like tours and merchandise to children, and like some of it's just clip art with like royalty-free fonts over it. His ability to sell it to usually kids and their parents, of course. But they're making millions off that, and it is in a way admirable. Not necessarily what they've done with that fame, but like how they got the fame from essentially being Viners, converting that completely when Vine died over to YouTube, and have obviously become some of the biggest creators on the platform, even being very heavily featured for whatever reason.
And we do have to give credit to them too. I mean, you know for a fact that any press is good press. Essentially. So even though they're going out there doing these horrendous things, they're still getting talked about. I mean, we're talking about them right now.
Exactly.
So they know what they're doing. And yeah, I agree with you. I do admire their business structure. I don't like it, but you have to at least give them props for knowing what they're doing and knowing their audience.
For sure. Like I didn't know Jake Paul existed, I don't think, until the Team 10 Everyday Bro video. That's the first thing I saw, and I was like, is this a fucking joke? But I quickly learned through all the scandals, like the first thing was like how they set their pool on fire at the rental house or whatever. And then how they kind of harassed a reporter and all that jazz. But
how long? I mean, so they both came from Vine.
Yeah.
Vine's been around since 2011, 2012. How long have they been making content?
I don't know, a while. I watched something about their content like a while back. It was essentially like saying how they got started. I think they were like competing essentially, so that was like a big driver for them, was like, hey, subscribe to me and not my brother. And it was basically the competitiveness of like these basically these white dudes from Ohio or whatever they're saying is making, Vine content. I mean, there's an audience for Vine content, of course. Obviously Vines can be funny. Again, their Vine content, not really for me, but they were able to, I guess, build a huge audience on Vine that somehow transferred over to YouTube. So that's, pretty admirable on there. But as far as the fight, I think Jake Paul is probably one of the people who came out the best from this, because he's obviously not getting as many accusations. For those who don't know, he won his fight against Deji, which is KSI's younger brother. As well as Jake Paul is obviously Logan Paul's younger brother. He won. I expected that personally. And then the Logan Paul fight and the KSI fight was a draw. And a lot of people were saying that was rigged. I mean, I don't believe so, personally, watching the fight. But the Jake Paul fight, that was very, very entertaining.
Well, let me ask you, do you watch boxing aside from this match?
No, I have seen it before. I have watched matches and stuff like that, but it's not like an avid thing. I'll be honest, like after seeing the match and stuff like that, cause they had a whole bunch of undercards all throughout the day. Like, I think it was like 10 matches beforehand. Some of that shit's pretty entertaining. Wow. Like, I don't know if it was 10. It was probably like more like 6 or 6 to 8.
Well, people were still paying money for this fight. Yeah, so they probably lined it up to be like a fight.
Yeah, it had to lead up. One of the only YouTubers I recognized outside of the two main ones was the Scarce fight. So Scarce existed, and a lot of people, that was the first time seeing him in quite a while. So I don't know what that beef was all about. I don't know the beef of anyone other than Jake Paul and the KSI brothers. But yeah, all in all, it was entertaining. A lot of people are saying that it was rigged, that it wasn't worth the money. Hundreds of thousands of people were watching it illegally on Twitch.
Of course.
Including, I don't know if you saw this, but that included Twitch staff, by the way. So
wow,
there's a screenshot going around of Twitch staff actively just watching the stream as opposed to taking it down. I think Keemstar said they opened themselves up to a lawsuit with that.
Did you see the guy who was like he had the Xbox controller in his hand, so it looked like he was playing like Fight Night, but he was actually just watching the fights. People could watch and like donate to him. Like people are scheming out there for these things.
Oh,
man.
For sure. Like I've seen people do that before on Twitch. That's always been a thing, I think, to get around the limit on that. It was really funny because at the beginning I was also trying to find like a stream on Twitch, and I found one. It was just this kid narrating it, but the kid was restreaming somebody else's stream, so he was basically just streaming their version. So so the commentator, like the narrator for the original one who was hosting it, was talking shit about the kid who was rehosting it, and he was like, "Hey," and so the kid was like trying to save himself, like trying to lie, like, "Oh guys, don't mind my friend. He's just joking around." But I'm sure
you got caught.
Yeah, I mean they all made money. There were like, I think 6 streams with like tens of thousands of good views going on. I paid legitimately. I just didn't want to deal with it and just cast it to my TV. I mean,
how much was it? Like it was like a $10 card.
It was $10, $10 for the whole day. And people say like, oh, it's not worth it, but like. Most boxing matches, they're running you like $60 to $100 a piece, and that's just for like one title card match that can end in like 30 seconds.
Dude, I straight up remember like back when I think it was the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. I drove my ass to a Buffalo Wild Wing because I'm like, I am not paying for this fight.
Oh yeah, it was probably what, $100, 100.
Yeah. Like if you honestly, I kind of wonder if this was the kind of fight that would have been streamed inside of a sports bar, because it was like the whole thing is internet fighting. Like, it's these people going on that are not celebrities, but they're YouTube celebrities,
or even professional boxers.
Have either of these dudes no, KSI fought before.
KSI
right?
has fought another YouTuber, Joe Weller. And a lot of people, it was kind of like a really shitty fight, honestly. You can go back and find the Joe Weller fight. It wasn't pay-per-view. But essentially, Joe Weller didn't throw a punch most of the time. So, like, KSI just beat the shit out of him and took him down in, like, just a few rounds. It was only, like, 45
those fights are never fun.
Yeah, but the KSI and the Logan Paul fight and the Jake Paul and the Deji fight, those were fucking worth viewing, man, let me tell you. But I can't show them at all because they will get taken down, as are most clips online. But you may have seen, like, the picture of, like, Jake Paul's bloody face going around. Yeah. But what was I saying? I mean, I think it was probably broadcast somewhere. I'm sure somebody was showing it illegally, like in bars and stuff like that. It didn't hit records, of course, because it was pay-per-view. If it wasn't pay-per-view, it probably would have hit hundreds of millions of people.
Oh, for sure.
Which it was expected to. It was expected to be like one of the biggest streaming events.
Well, what is it? I actually remember the little article that I found to talk about this. What is it? Logan Paul has 18 million and KSI has 19 million. Yeah, so you have to assume that even if 1/5 of each of their fans came out, that's a lot of people.
I think somebody did the calculations. I think it was like Th3 because the arena sold out. And I think they both got a reported like 10 million or something like that. Although it's probably a lot less. Because they have to be able to pay for the arena and everything like that. And they had like the old style like boxer announcer and everything. I'm sure he wasn't cheap. Like the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy, he was there. So like,
are you serious? Wow,
yes, he was there. And everything.
They put money into this.
Yeah, but he only showed up during like the last 2 fights. So like, they didn't want to pay the day rate. What was I saying though? Crap. What were we talking about before that?
Talking about the fight, how many subscribers they have, the viewers.
Oh, the money and stuff like that. So
yeah,
they probably guaranteed make money. The thing that people point to a lot for like the rigging is that there's a second match already planned. That was already set in stone with their contract. So like KSI keeps a lot of the money and proceeds from this first match, and then Logan Paul gets a decent amount from the second one. That's to my knowledge of the contract.
Isn't it the second one in America?
Yeah, I think it's in LA. So that's going to be the second rematch fight, but that was going to happen regardless. So I don't see why they had really any reason to make it a draw. Cause like, regardless, like say somebody won, like KSI won or Logan Paul won, people are still going to watch the second fight cause somebody needs a redemption story. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be a draw to watch again. Cause now a lot of people are just pissed off.
You know, and the funny thing is like, so I was a very huge fan of WWE in the past. I like that all of the fights have storylines to them. It's not just like two people go into a ring that you don't know. It's like they actually have a planned outcome. Mm-hmm. And usually draws only happen when you don't plan them. So sometimes I do think that maybe this was staged, but even then, like, these dudes are out to make money.
Yeah.
And there is a part of me that does think that it was a little bit faked just because, let's hype up even more tension for when he comes back. But I do kind of see where you're coming from, though. The redemption story, that would have been a lot more fun. That way you could have got behind somebody. If Logan Paul would have won, I would have wanted him to lose even more for the next fight, which maybe even would have gotten me to tune in.
Yeah.
It won't now because I'm like, they drew the first time, so great. Maybe they'll draw again.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I wanted to bring up was the fact that... cut this out. But what was I going to say? I don't realistically think that, like, sure, in WWE you can plan the outcome, everything like that. You're obviously doing moves that are physically intensive, but they're not necessarily as dangerous as, like, really trying to punch the shit out of each other.
Oh, for sure.
I don't realistically think you could go 6 rounds of somebody punching you square in the face and then not want to haul out and just beat their ass. Like, I don't realistically think you could be like, I have this guy on the ropes. It's a 6th round. Oh, let me draw. Let me pull back. No, you're going to want to win. Like, why would you not want to win, basically, with the world watching? Like, I don't.
And that's kind of why I'm on the fence, too, about it being, was it a draw or was it something that actually came out to be planned? Because, typically speaking, if you are in that fight, if you have the advantage, you got that adrenaline pump and your mind's laser focused on winning this fight. Why would you want to draw?
Yeah. And if you watch the fights, like the Jake Paul and the Deji one and the KSI and the Logan Paul one, they're hitting each other really fucking hard. Jake Paul's nose was bleeding. I don't remember if Logan Paul's was nearly as bad. Joe Weller, like, was commenting, like, sometimes that can just happen if you've been boxing for a while. Sometimes you just start bleeding from the nose with, like, the slightest tap on the face, which I found pretty funny. Cause everyone thought Jake Paul was going to lose from that, but... Oh, no, I don't think it's rigged, personally. I hope it's not, because that makes it just a little bit more cheap, but at the end of the day, it was still worth watching because it was entertaining. I got hours and hours of entertainment for less than I pay for a movie, right from the couch.
And that's what it's all about. Yeah. Like, you got your $10 worth. End of the day, everything's right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's definitely worth it, personally, to me. Do you have any other comments you want to make about... Obviously, we're going to transition into esports and stuff like that, but this is more of an internet sports, and that's why I kind of made that generalization of internet sports, because this is kind of involved with that. Well, it's obviously not esports, which is kind of like trying to make its own name for itself among actual sports like boxing, or I shouldn't say actual sports, just sports in general. Traditionally recognized sports. There you go. This is a spectacle event, so spectacle fights, like stuff like, Mayweather versus McGregor, stuff like that, for example. Those are spectacle fights. People during the whole event with KSI and Logan Paul, they weren't in the same weight class. They weren't. They had like feet differences from each other. It wasn't about like traditional boxing, like, oh, we're equals, we can beat it out and have like a traditional ranking system. This is like, hey, you want to see these two really cool or really important or really recognized or famous people beat the shit out of each other, or in this case, two really hated people beat the shit out of each other? Yeah, that's there's a market for that, I think. And
actually, I think this is kind of relatable to how, where there's all the game shows and then they have a special celebrity episode where it's supposed to be all of your favorite people from TV. Like, this is the next era of that. Again, YouTubers that become this big are effectively celebrities. You can't write them off just because they're not showing up in movies or they're not making music anymore.
And two of them, I think all of them have.
Yeah. And I think it's actually important for us to remember that this kind of spectacle, this kind of content is here to stay. Like, it's not just a one and done thing. This is going to happen again.
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously the fight's going to happen. During the fight, there were some really random call-outs. Like, I think Raka called somebody else out. Jake Paul called out Chris Brown, of all people. which I found pretty funny. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. So I mean, they did have like a year, like in the title. I think it was like World YouTube Boxing Champion of 2018 or something like that. So there's always the opportunity they make this a yearly event, which would be really neat, I think. Th3 actually, I think, was doing some goofs. He's trying to like plan his own like shitty one between like Shoe Nice and Joey Salads and people like that, like on the meme level. So yeah, I think that's basically it. So yeah, as a slight transition before we get into Overwatch League, I do want to mention that this show is sponsored. Our first partner is actually Into the AM. They're the awesome clothing brand that you can find online. They carry officially licensed game merch, as well as some other awesome designs that are like all-around print, those kind of cool stuff that are pretty rare. And basically they're here to give us 10% off your first order. So in case you didn't know, they're also the creators of the Overwatch League jerseys. I don't know if you've seen that site before.
Actually, I own an Overwatch League jersey purchased by Into the AM, and my oh my, I must say, extremely high quality, and you guys need to get your hands on some of this merch.
Yeah, so did you get it customized?
I did not. I really wanted to, but I was like, because they were on sale once the season ended, so I was like, I can spend $30 for the base jersey and then get it customized later, or I can spend the full price, no sale, and get it customized, or get the customized one. So I chose the base one, but I do intend on buying it from the future because I went into the AM first for the jerseys, and then, like you mentioned, they have some really cool prints. Like they had this one like Space Galaxy one that's like all over your body, and it looks so cool.
Yeah, like it's so rare to find like all over prints and stuff like that. I mean, like seriously, like if you try to go on Redbubble or like some other general merch shop, you're not going to find it online. So while the 10% code unfortunately doesn't work for the Overwatch League merch, because obviously Blizzard's
That's
important.
A partnership.
Blizzard's important, yeah. However, the code does work on stuff like the 50% off clearance stuff that's going on right now for the summer sale. From what I've seen on the site, they literally always have like 3 or 4 deals going on at any given time, like 20% off or $20 off hoodies, buy 3 shirts for $60, stuff like that. And that includes like the all-around prints, which are usually really expensive at regular retailers. However, the Overwatch League jerseys, those actually do count towards a free shipping deal that you also get with that. So if you hit $75, your shipping is completely free. So yeah, just a kind of little add-on on that. So if you're looking to get an Overwatch League jersey and also check out the other cool merch that's there, you can basically add those all to your cart. If it's over $75, you get it right there, free shipping, and 10% off all regular items, which is basically everything except for the Overwatch League jerseys. All you got to do for that is enter code THEBUZZ at checkout, and that's it. That'll basically automatically be added to your cart, and you're good to go. So yeah, cool. We even got a testimonial that was unplanned, so there you go. I've been really out, like eyeing them right now. Like I don't know, because like obviously the season's ending, teams are about to change around a lot, which is something I do want to talk about pretty briefly. But I'm really torn again between like the Houston Outlaws and the Dallas Fuel stuff.
I mean, I'm gonna lay down my flag, burn blue. What's up, my Dallas boys? How y'all doing?
I was with you at the beginning of the season, but Houston Outlaws, like slowly over time. Those guys are pretty cool too. So I whenever I bought Overwatch League merch, when it was decreased in price on the Blizzard store, I actually got one set of both. So I got like a few shirts. So technically I can ride the middle line.
No, you get to represent Texas.
Exactly. It's general
that's
Texas.
What it's all about.
Exactly. So yeah, besides obviously the merch and stuff like that, the season is coming to an end. All-Stars already happened on the same day as that KSI Logan Paul fight. How do you feel about how season 1 was handled, and what do you think could be made better for season 2? Because that's obviously going to be coming sometime next year.
Oh man, my time to shine. All right, so check it out. Overwatch League Season 1 was a remarkable event, not just in itself, but also for esports as a whole. I remember when the league was first announced at BlizzCon back in 2017.
It was a leak? I didn't know that.
It was, sorry. Anyway, it was announced all the way back then, and then we came into the season in just a couple of months after its announcement. However, at the start, it was a little rocky. There were some production hiccups. The teams were still nervous. You know, there was lots of things that were going on behind the scenes that are not technically, they were completely unprofessional. But then after a while, they learned, they adapted. And as someone who grew up watching a lot of sports, there were lots of things that were almost identical to how you would watch a basic NFL or an NBA broadcast. I think that the entire team, not just from the players, but the staff at the event center, the organizations that run the teams themselves, all learned throughout this inaugural season. And by the time the season ended, just about everybody, minus a couple of teams, had their footing figured out. And going into the second season, it's going to be very exciting because not only do we have more teams joining us, which I know you alluded to earlier, but we are also going to have a lot of exciting changes that I'm ready to see brought to light.
For sure. So one of the biggest things and what personally interests me most is the new teams, just because obviously the teams that they have right now for season 1, really interesting. There's a great variety. I think everybody can find their own team. And I think that's what's awesome about the Overwatch League as opposed to more standard esports leagues and competitions, stuff like that. They're all location based in theory, at least. I mean, obviously the people don't stay there, but it kind of brings you that more personal connection that you would see in more traditional sports like football and basketball.
It makes it easy to find a team to cheer for.
Exactly, like us going for Texas teams and stuff like that, and the whole Texas wars and stuff like that kind of rivalry, semi-rivalry. I mean, Dallas lost every time, but
hey, there was a hard fight in the fourth time, okay?
But like that kind of stuff, it adds more character, I think, than just like the typical like, oh, here's Cloud9 or Envy or whatever. Like the CSGO teams, like obviously like I've seen some of the Cloud9 guys. I go to DreamHack basically most years, but it brings a bit more character. Like, hey, here's this team. This is Dallas Field. This is Mickey. He's the outgoing silly one, or Raucous, he's the pretty boy. Like Jake is the memer. Like that kind of shit. Where like it adds a bit more character. Like obviously with the names being actively on display, like, hey, here's this person. Here's their score. This is their role. I just feel like it brings a bit more personality to it that makes it a little bit more accessible to your standard viewer, for sure.
And you know, what's funny you say that is the commissioner, Nate Nanzer, mentioned in multiple interviews about how the Overwatch League is trying to do for esports what regular sports do, and that's adding storylines. That's making the players people and not just people that control a video game character. All the names that you just mentioned are people that you can figuratively put a face to. Sure, they may play a specific character more than others, but they actually have a personality to them. And entire teams have personalities, storylines that can be followed, cheered for, or hated upon. And that's what makes the Overwatch League so remarkable. I mean, watching other esports, sure, you do have your Team Liquid, you do have your Cloud9s, you do have any other team, like, say, NRG, for example, right? They are a team that exists, they're very popular in the North American sphere. They also run the San Francisco Shock. So
yeah, there's a lot of crossover between that. Not
exactly.
Not to get that confused, but yeah, there's obviously crossover, but it kind of brings it in a more presentable light. Like, here are the athletes. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just like, hey, here's this team of 6 playing CSGO. You know what I mean?
Right. And it makes people more recognizable too, you know, like it's you have a brand that can be assigned to a city. Again, going back to that location-based stuff, when you have an entire city to rally behind, you have fans to your left and to your right. You know, it actually makes the teams want to be cheered for versus, why do I care about these guys? Yeah,
exactly. Sure, you can watch, you know, any esport, like, oh, here's a really intense CSGO match. You can see that quality of play and everything like that, but nothing will compare like to the storyline that it was. Like I still remember the feeling of like watching the Seoul Dynasty and the very first the first stage of season 1, how scary Seoul Dynasty was, and then they were
the team to be afraid of.
Exactly. And then they got beat once. and then everybody else started to be able to play against them. It was kind of like somebody defeated the giant, and then they were just able to take them on from there. And they weren't just like this unstoppable force from Korea that was basically able to slaughter everybody. Unfortunately, Dallas Fuel was the first one they took out, I believe.
Hey, it was an okay first match. It was how you brought the season in.
It was an amazing, like, just seeing Overwatch League for the first time, like, that was amazing. Like, viewing parties and awesome, everything awesome like that. I mean, I think even Florida Mayhem at one point almost tied with Seoul Dynasty. Like, that just shows you how much stuff can shift around as the season goes on.
Yeah, the downfall of the dynasty was very sad. I mean, they lost players, they've lost coaches. That's just what happens to a professional sporting team. I mean, the Dallas Fuel went through a very horrible slump until the point where after 3/4 of the season, they just fired their head coach and got a new one. Sometimes it's little things like that require a team to come back, and Seoul just didn't at all, and it kind of sucks.
And that's the thing is they were a little lacking in like the traditional like, oh, here are these players, they're really cool. Like obviously most like their characteristic was being an unstoppable force. Like the only one I remember is Fleta, and I was like, oh my god, he's really good. Like that's primarily what you'll remember from stuff like that. It's all about character, and kind of building those, relationships between the teams and the cities and stuff like that. It just makes it,
and the funny thing too is by building these teams as characters, they also get their own characteristics on social media.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you have the Florida Mayhem, who are known to be the jokesters.
Yeah, now
there's
memeing.
That's all they do is they just meme all day. The Los Angeles Gladiators come up with the absolute best burns on Twitter. The London Spitfire, the grand final champions, are the cocky but still somewhat humble team now. Like, it's always fun to see how they all interact.
And I'm also interested to see where the new teams go. You know what I mean? Because, that's the thing that I was saying before. Like, you have that connection. And one thing that you could almost say it was a fault, but not necessarily the league's fault, is that not everyone has that connection because you only have 12 teams, or whatever the official amount. It was 12, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure. It was 12 teams. So, I mean, that only really hit so many people. And 2 of those 12 teams were right here in Texas. One team is the entirety of China. There's one Korean team, no Japanese team. One European team, I think specifically with like the London Spitfire and stuff like that. I don't know if there was a German team, but...
Nope, just European.
I remember they had a lot of German players and stuff like that and a lot of European players. I was like,
well, the crazy thing was for the first season, pretty much 3/4 of the teams came from the United States. Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, so you had one in China, one that represented Korea, one that represented the EU, and everywhere else was here. But for the second season, that's changing just a little bit, but there's still a majority in the US.
And I think that was a little bit on purpose too, because I think Blizzard has come out like publicly and said like, hey, we want to build... Obviously, we have the one esports stadium here, but we also want to build one in, I think, Korea and one in Europe as well. Like, they want to expand and make it worldwide. Obviously, not in the first season, because that's expensive as hell. But I think that's probably purposeful because you can be like, hey, are you any one of these U.S. cities? Hey, come to the one U.S. stadium that we own because it's the only stadium. It's a lot more likely. Like, I was tempted, obviously, to go out to Burbank and watch at least one match during the season, just because you have a lot more fan base theoretically here in the U.S. With those U.S. teams. So I think that might have been a little bit on purpose. And these season 2 expansions that have officially been announced now, I think hint more towards like the global expansion that they're expecting for season 2.
And with you mentioning how expensive it is, I want to throw some numbers at you real quick.
Yeah.
So, for the initial season, each team needed a absolute minimum $20 million to have a team.
It's the buy-in. That's the minimum, like, to get a spot, basically.
Yeah, and then for the second season, after the huge success of the first season, the buy-in is now starting at $35 million.
I heard it was 35 to 60 million.
Yes,
and
sir.
That's all dependent on the the size of the population, I don't really know how that scales. Like, if you have a bigger population, is it less or more? I don't I don't know exactly why that factors into that.
Those details are still a little under the rug. But
well, of course,
thinking about how expensive it is to build everything here, Activision Blizzard, from all these expansion teams alone, this is not counting merchandise, this is not counting player salaries, anything that could be brought in an extra $280 million just for the second season before it even started.
Oh, you mean as far as like the just the teams coming in?
That's just the teams coming in. That's not counting their new partnership with Twitter. That's not counting any potential renewal of a contract with Twitch. That is just the teams individually. I think that the Overwatch League as a brand is going to make a lot of money the next few years.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure everybody's kind of taking their cut on that, but like, I forgot to mention like how many places the Overwatch League has expanded in just the first season. Like, first of all, like during the preseason, it was like, oh, you can watch on, I think it was, what was it? MLG. Like, that was the only place you could watch it. And then they announced the Twitch partnership.
Twitch? Yep.
Yeah. And then it was Twitch. And then eventually towards the finales, they started broadcasting on ESPN, which is like pretty major. And then Disney XD as well, which is obviously a great place to go. You get a very young audience with that. Overall, if you think about it, Overwatch League is actually a pretty family-friendly go around. Like, obviously there's some stuff behind the scenes that can be a little iffy on there, but if you're just watching the sport, I mean, comparing it to football and some of the things that go on behind the scenes there, I mean, it's an obvious market. Like, it's a great expansion to do, and I think the All-Stars games were broadcast on those places as well. Twitter, I think you mentioned before, that's for season 2. They're going to have it broadcast there too. There's going to be a lot of places to watch, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger, basically.
And that's not just Overwatch League, though. I think esports are really on their way on the up and up. I mean, I can keep throwing numbers about the millions of people that watch the grand finals, but ultimately, we are starting to see an insurgence of esports in the entire country. You've mentioned DreamHack and how it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We have all these other esports like Counter-Strike, like Dota, that are bringing in millions of people, packing stadiums. This isn't just a bunch of kids playing in their mom's basement. Like, no, these are athletes that are coming up making a lot more money than you and I ever will.
Exactly. And a lot of people still try to simplify that, of course. It's not there yet. It's a long road ahead to convince more traditional sports fans, of course, to even want esports on ESPN or accept it as being there.
Well, it's almost there.
It's a road.
I really do think so.
Yeah, and I'm sure probably within the next 5 to 10 years, I'm sure it'll be pretty mainstream. But do you think the future of esports is how it has been pretty much since it started, where it was like, oh, here's the teams, where you talk about the little bit less personality, but the events are a bit more of a spectacle, because you see like, hey, here's DreamHack, come see all these major players all at once? Or do you think it's going to be more like Overwatch League, where it's like, hey, here's your local Dota or your local CSGO team, come check us out?
I honestly think that the Overwatch League formula might be the winning formula, just because, I mean, I keep relating it back to watching sports as a kid, having a league where I get to watch something the entire time. League of Legends has the LCS, and those are based in each region. While those aren't city-based teams, they are still hey, come by every so often and watch a bunch of games, which I think is the direction that we need to go in. Because if you only have these tournaments once every year or so, I actually don't know how often they have TI for Dota, because that's the biggest esports event that I can think of. I honestly feel that once we start getting into more of a, hey, you can catch esports every day of the week, where it's a consistent, hey, come check out this team, hey, come check out this game, oh, well, you just missed this game, guess what, now check out this other one. I mean, I am very guilty of finishing an Overwatch League game and seeing what other esports are going on, just because it's fun to watch that competition. It's fun to actually sit down and catch a sporting event. Sure, for these other leagues, I don't really know who to cheer for, but it's still entertaining to watch.
For sure. And I was going to mention, just like in general, I was a little worried, like with Overwatch League, like, oh, obviously they have seasons, and there are reports that like season 2 is pushed back quite a bit, like all the way into 2019. So it won't be starting like fall like it did last year. I was a little worried because it was going to be like, oh, there's a lull kind of between the seasons, but they had All-Stars, which I think was a pretty awesome fan event, like at least kind of bring people together, because they actually played mini games and arcade games that are in the game, like Lucio Ball and stuff like that, which apparently a lot of players hated. And now they have the World Cup, which is a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be. I've been trying to check that out when
today.
I can. Exactly. The World Cup's here, all the teams. Is XQC still in Canada, or is he like on his final warning still?
No, he is playing for Team Canada.
Okay. I don't think he's perma-banned from Overwatch League, but I highly doubt he's coming back. He's
for
obviously not coming back
Overwatch League in particular, because of XQC, and I will say I know a lot because he was on the Dallas Fuel. I did have to report on him for my news show. But right now, his standing is he is still eligible to play in the Overwatch League.
If
the problem is, exactly, no one really wants him, because in any kind of professional sport, you don't want scandals. You don't want drama, because all that'll do is overshadow anything good your team does.
Yeah, and I was originally an XQC fan before I knew too much about him. Like, I didn't watch his streams, but whenever I watched World Cup last year, whenever that rolled around, I was like, holy fuck. Being a tank main, like, seeing a Winston just go around and, like, literally just be so aggressive and really, really good at the game. Like, even before I knew names and knew Overwatch League was going to be a thing, the Canada team, I think, because I was watching the finals for it, I saw XQC, I saw Soon, and now those people are having a major career. I believe Soon is on the LA Valiant right now. He had some pretty good plays. He was a DPS player. And XQC, those were personally the standouts for me. So obviously going into Overwatch League, seeing that he was on a Dallas team, I was like, hey, Dallas feels the perfect fit. Because I can watch it, get some tank inspiration, because I was pretty heavy into Overwatch at that time. But then he ended up being kind of a douchebag. So, as one of the announcers put it, he was basically the embodiment of Twitch chat, which, as you know, can be pretty disgusting.
Can be?
Yeah, it can be pretty disgusting in the moral areas. Not to go too deep into it, but yeah, generally he just kind of acted like a douche. Not by any means, he's a pretty good entertainer. Like, obviously he has an audience. They spiked whenever he left. He talked a little bit more candidly than most people about Overwatch League, about his experience and what he thinks they could fix about it. Even one of the things that he mentioned was something you talked about, which was the storylines, which weren't too present at the beginning of the season. That was something that he pointed out actually pretty early on as something that needed to be fixed. So obviously he's still involved in the Overwatch community. He's still friends with a lot of the people in that higher level of play. But I am kind of curious if they will be willing to go back and pick him up. Because obviously he's still on the World Cup team. Obviously he's wanted. Obviously people are going to push him up and be like, yeah, no, he's our Winston.
I will answer this for you. Will Dallas Fuel take XQC back? No.
Obviously not. No, of course not. Because like,
very easy.
They were the ones who let him go. Like, they're not going to take him back. And I assume that probably means, because of what I've understood about the Overwatch League contracts, they're guaranteed a salary, to my knowledge. So
yep, I'm 50K sure, minimum.
Yeah, I bet he got a payout. Like, I'm sure he still made his whole salary even after quitting. Regardless, it's just a matter of, is he going to stay in LA? Is he going to try to go for another team?
Ultimately, I can say I think he might get picked up by one of the two Canada teams.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking just now. Was like I believe he's a French-Canadian guy from Quebec. So the Toronto team might be the one for him. So just to get into that just a little bit, well, I actually do want to talk a little bit more about the expansion that's going on with Overwatch.
Sure.
But since we are talking about Overwatch quite a bit, I did want to bring up this other deal we have going on. We are partnered with Humble Bundle. Humble Bundle, for the few of you that don't know that it exists, is the awesome online store where you can basically get games super cheap. But at the same time, it's supporting charity and, by extension, us as well. I've tweeted about this before. They had awesome bundles like the Jackbox bundle before, where you could get like over $50 worth of Jackbox games for like $12 or something like that, or $15. It was ridiculously good deals, and that's like stuff that's going on all the time. Essentially, the Humble Bundle, they have the Humble Store, which is kind of like Steam, except with some quality control, basically. They have the regular Humble Bundles and the amazing Humble Monthly Bundle. which if you ever had loot box, it's kind of like that, but for digital games. So essentially you're getting over $100 worth of games for only $12. So last month it was Tomb Raider, but the reason I wanted to bring this up for sure this time is that the Humble monthly game is actually Overwatch.
Get it.
Which a huge surprise. Like, Blizzard usually does not do these kind of deals with Humble Bundles. It's usually stuff with Steam. But Overwatch being a $30 to $40 game that people already buy like 2 copies of anyway for Smurf accounts, you're basically getting that for half off. You can get just for $12, you're getting Overwatch. As well as, like, I think they said 5 other games for this bundle, and that lasts until October 5th, so that's when they all unlock and you get them all at the same time. So basically you have until then to unlock it, but like if you're somebody who has been looking for that secondary account, or that Smurf just to kind of fuck around your Hanzo only account, this might be your time to jump in that, because like, $12, half rate. At the same time, you are also supporting us and charity, like I mentioned before. So it's definitely a good place to check out. You don't have to have commitments. You can just subscribe for the 1 month. You can just check out the store, or just the regular bundles that are going on. They have all sorts of random stuff like the book bundles. They have software bundles. They have asset bundles sometimes for stuff like Photoshop. It's like a ridiculously varied service once you get outside the store and look at some of the bundles on there. So yeah.
And, I do want to say, guys, you really should go out and grab this one, not just for the fact that it is the cheapest Overwatch has ever been.
Yeah, for sure.
Typically this game maybe goes half off during like a Christmas sale or something, but getting it for $12 plus all the extra games that you get inside this month's monthly bundle, yeah, no, it's kind of worth it.
Yeah, for sure. If you're somebody who's been on the fence about getting it, or you've seen Overwatch League and you're like, hey, I want to try out Overwatch because it is the most polished hero shooter ever made. Whether or not you're going to play it forever, I mean, that's obviously on your end. I still play it time to time when I can, when my computer can actually run it, because my computer is slowly dying. But like for months and months since it came out, Overwatch was one of my mainstays. So if you want to try it out for $12, support charity, get some other games as well that will be unlocked once that October 5th rolls around. You can go ahead and check out the link in the description below, or you can go to this very convoluted link, which is www.humblebundle.com/monthly, and then a question mark, partner =the buzz. Obviously, that's not the most convenient URL. You can basically add question mark partner =the buzz to any URL for Humble Bundle, and it'll activate basically our partner code. So any purchases you make through that will help us out. But if you check out the one specifically in the description, that's going to be to the monthly bundle, which again does have the Overwatch for $12. So yeah, no commitment on there. You can just subscribe for the 1 month and then cancel after you get your game, and you're all good. So yeah, pretty great service. All right. I mean, I've personally been using Humble Bundle for years. Just I throw that out there. Like, I've been subscribed, and just like when I saw this one come up, I was like so surprised, because like that's a great deal.
Right. No, I've also bought my fair share of Humble Bundles. Almost my entire Steam library is comprised of Humble Bundle games. I've been supporting this business for a minute now, and I will continue to do so because they do really great things, and we as gamers get a lot back. So I'm really happy for Humble Bundle.
Exactly. They even have their own like summer and winter sales, very similar to Steam. I think the summer sale is going on right now. I don't know if it'll still be out whenever this podcast comes out, but if it is, definitely check that out too, because those are really good sales. But yeah, getting back into Overwatch specifically, we were talking about the expansion teams and kind of how that's going to come into play with the more global, kind of scheme of Overwatch, because obviously it's a lot of US teams, and then about half of them are expanded out. So looking over the teams right now, there is a Vancouver, Canada team. There is a Hangzhou, China team, Paris, France team, a Chengdu, China. How would you say?
Chengdu.
Okay. Okay. So 2 new China teams, a Toronto, Canada team. So that's 2 new Canada teams. And then one of all places in Washington, D.C. That one kind of personally surprised me. I think that was the last one to be kind of reported and officially announced. But yeah, so if you look into the people actually creating these teams, it's kind of like a whole variety. It's some esports stuff. It's some gaming and media companies. Some of them are just general, like I believe one of the Canada teams, let's see, is specifically about just a diversified family business that owns National Hockey Leagues, Vancouver Canucks, and the Rogers Arena, which is actually an esports arena that's been used recently for stuff like CSGO, I believe.
The Vancouver team was inevitable. I mean, the fact that they already have an esports presence in Vancouver, or just in Canada in general, was inevitable. Yeah. The fact that they got 2 really is saying something.
And yeah, it goes from like simple, just like committees and like companies like that, to I read before the Chengdu China team, sorry for mispronouncing that, is owned by Huey Inc., which I had looked into before. They're one of the leading game live streaming platforms in China, so probably like a Chinese Twitch essentially. They're going to be operating that team. So like you're seeing more. I'm wondering if they'll actually try to get some sort of deal going on where they get some sort of distribution in China, kind of going the extra mile, just kind of like as their lead in, like, hey, we'll have a team, we'll pay this money. Hey, also we'll pay this money so we get exclusive rights in China or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that come around in season 2, personally.
Yeah. I personally am very excited to see the more global side of the world come through. The fact that we now have a Paris team, not just a London team, means that we're going to get a lot more EU love. Mm-hmm. Going back to my Open Division team, we have plenty of members that are part of the European team. Who often talk about how they can't stay up and support their team, but they'd love to. I mean, the people who won the Overwatch League inaugural season were the London Spitfire. Now, granted, the grand finals were going on probably at like 4 a.m. for them over in London.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. You would... I'd be surprised if they didn't do some sort of rebroadcast or something like that, or at least try to fix that in the future to be like, hey,
something tells me... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, oh, here's the standard version that appears at regular U.S. time and then rebroadcast on Twitch, because obviously they do the replays occasionally at this random hour of night where the main team is. I feel like that would bring a lot more, like, locality to it. Like, hey, here's the broadcast just for you.
Well, during the second half of the season, or closer to the end, they did start rebroadcasting the entire night's games multiple times throughout the day for the other audience. But yeah, it is just literally the same broadcast redone another time and then another time afterwards. But the people who do want to watch in the European areas, or maybe in China or South Korea, do get a broadcast that's at their more optimal time. It's just after the main broadcast.
Yeah, and one thing that to note with that, which is kind of a positive when it comes to like the locality and stuff like that. I don't know if you knew, but they actually rebroadcast they simulcast the Overwatch League games, I believe, in French and Korean as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they already kind of have that global built in. It's just a matter of getting those times a little bit more appropriate for everybody, especially when you are getting those more global teams like the Paris, France, and the 2 new China teams. Honestly, really surprised to not see a Japanese team here, if I'm being honest.
I think it partially just might be that esports in Japan aren't as big as Korea, they should be. Like that, yeah. Because in Korea, if you are an esports athlete, you're bigger than a movie star.
Yeah, for sure.
You are the echelon of celebrity in South Korea, which is why even though there is only one team representing South Korea, multiple teams have full South Korean rosters, and multiple teams have at least one... No, let me change that. Every team has at least one South Korean player on it.
Oh, for sure.
So it really goes to show that South Korea has a dominant side of esports, but I mean, looking at the World Cup, which is being broadcast today and tomorrow for the North American teams, there's plenty of competition out there that isn't just in the Pacific Islands.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, yeah, so who knows? I mean, I'm sure we'll see more esports expansion. I'm like something like a new Korean team. I'm sure it's inevitable. By the time season 3 rolls around, I know they did just announce these season 2 teams. Speaking of season 2, what do you expect to see different? Because obviously we're huge fans of this first season here, but what do you think they're going to change as far as realistic? Like obviously stuff like the rebroadcast during times like locally.
Yeah.
But what do you think is something they're going to do? Like that they haven't quite announced yet?
I definitely know that the way that we watch games and the scheduling of it is going to change. Now that we have a much larger team base on the other side of the world, we did just gain 3 Chinese teams and 1 European team. They really have to make sure that they actually do stuff for them. So, for example, in your traditional day, you had 3 games, 6 teams would play. Now that there are 20 total teams, something tells me that it's going to end up going from 3 to maybe 5 games a day, where the desk gets to rotate through, you get different people on each game. We really have to take a look into the way that the games are played.
Yeah.
Another thing is I think we're going to be seeing a lot more ads. I mean, let's be honest, ads are what makes any business money nowadays.
Hashtag ad. But yeah,
right?
Realistically, everybody needs to make money, and honestly, the way that they've done it is pretty tasteful generally through Overwatch League.
I agree.
Yeah, so
I agree.
Hey, we're gonna take a break while the people go take a pee. And you might also go take a pee while this timer's going on, but hey, here's this ad for Toyota or whatever, or Intel. Intel probably powers all of their computers that are there, but also they're a sponsor, probably paying a lot of money. But all in all, it's not like there's hey, here is the Intel ad. Of course, they do that sometimes, but and they'll have plays sponsored by whatever. But it's not obnoxious about it. It's not like there's a huge watermark on top of the gameplay, for example. They don't take it to
don't worry, that's coming. That's coming. I guarantee you. Because you have for the NFL the Snickers halftime play or something like that, where it's a big Snickers logo.
They do replays like that, but I don't think it's as bad as it could be for something in the digital space to have ads. Of course, there are going to be more advertisers, and there are going to be more teams, but I'm going to kind of go against you on the whole more matches. I definitely think that's a possibility. But what I think that they might do is add a bit more of diversity to it. Because obviously, with the teams that we have right now, your team is playing multiple times a week usually. And the same advertisers, there were only 4 major advertisers for Overwatch League. It was Toyota, Sour Patch, T-Mobile, and Intel, I think, were the primary ones. You only have so much to do with that. You only have so many teams you can really rotate around to make it interesting. So I think they may just keep it the same amount of matches, but kind of vary it up, kind of throw them into the mix. So it's hey, there's going to be a Dallas Fuel game on Tuesday and Friday, instead of hey, Dallas Fuel's playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday against the Shanghai Dragons again.
Well, they did actually fix that. Sorry to correct you, but each team only ever played twice a week. In the beginning of the season, they did have a lot of extra overlap, and there were multiple complaints by players and fans both saying, hey guys, this is too much. So then they changed things around. We had a couple of instances where you would have a team that would play the final game of the night and then be asked to turn around and play the first game the next morning. With every new sports league, there are going to be scheduling issues. There's going to be things figuring out, and you kind of have to fix things along the way, which they definitely did. But I do see where you're coming from with there not being any more games added each day. But we do also have to take into account that the amount of advertisers has increased. With Twitch being a huge sponsor for the Overwatch League, they have to promote cheering, they have to promote the Overwatch League All Access Pass, they have to promote all these extra things, and then if you don't purchase an Overwatch League All Access Pass and you're watching on Twitch, guess what? You get Amazon's ads then.
I still have Amazon Prime, so for right now, that cuts out the ads.
Yeah, so if you already subscribe to Amazon Prime or Twitch Prime or any of the primes that they like to give you nowadays,
honestly, they're taking a lot of it away. I don't know if you read the email from Twitch. Basically, they're taking away, they're putting back ads for Prime. I
saw that. Yeah,
you get a $10 off coupon instead of 20% off pre-order games, which is kind of lame. It's about the same, but not quite.
I honestly think that might have just been due to
they were losing a lot of money.
Yeah, but these companies are realizing that no matter what they do, they have to show ads if they want to make serious money. You look at Hulu, for example. Even if you pay $10 a month, you still get ads.
Yeah, unless you pay $3 more, basically.
Right? So I always ask, like, then what's the point of having people pay for a service if they intentionally think they're not going to get ads? I mean, didn't Netflix just say they're going to start adding ads?
No, I think that was more so like an overreaction. Essentially, Netflix is testing with like some people. It's essentially targeted advertising for their own show. So it's not like, hey, that's fine. Hey, here's toothpaste. You want it? Okay, back to your baking show. That's real targeted advertising there.
See, that's fine then. If it's more
so just like, hey, you liked this British Bake Off show or whatever, go check out this other cooking show that we paid a lot of money for.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's probably just trying to get people to watch their other stuff, which still. I mean,
to Amazon, to Netflix's credit, they make a lot of really good content too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm finishing up Ozark season 2 actually, probably later tonight. It's really good.
Nice.
It's kind of like a sleeper one. It took a long time for season 2 compared to like the Netflix shows, which are no longer good, really. I haven't watched any of the season 2s after The Defenders, which was also pretty ass.
Yeah.
First seasons were all right for all the shows, though.
Hey, they got that Disney and Marvel money. They're going to go for it.
Well, Disney's about to pull their money out of Netflix, though, is the thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Disney wants to make their own Netflix, basically. So I think after 2019, I think is the contract. That's when their like exclusivity deal, like where you see like, oh, Black Panther is now on Netflix after only a few months. And all the other movies before that, besides like Spider-Man, during that certain period of time, essentially they're going to stop that. And then they're going to, so basically after 2019, it's going to be like, oh, now these movies are going to go onto the Disney service or whatever. And over time, once the contracts expire for like Thor Ragnarok, they're going to start pulling those too. Which I just find it to be really weird personally that they would go through all the effort to make like, hey, Netflix, you want to co-produce the Defenders miniseries and the Daredevil, which is really good, and all these other shows and partnering to do that. I found that to be really odd. Like, hey, let's have a partnership. Let's exclusively show movies on here. Let's make some stuff together and be like, nah, never mind. Excuse me. Be like, oh, no, never mind. Let's yank everything out of there and make our own service, which of course people are going to pay for because it's Disney stuff. That's Star Wars, Disney movies, and Marvel all in one package. So. But yeah.
That's really interesting. I wonder how much they're going to charge for that.
Probably like the standard 10. I don't know if that's reported yet. I don't think they've really even talked too much about it as far as what it'll be. But I'm sure for a parent, I mean, that's going to be pretty standard. Just like Netflix and Hulu can be pretty standard for households nowadays. I'm sure people are going to get the Disney app. Do you still watch Funhouse regularly?
No, not anymore.
Okay. They had a dude soup where they actually kind of talked about this very subject, and they were talking about how if you add all the costs up of like the Disney service and the Hulu and the Netflix and like Amazon Prime and all that kind of shit, that's still less than your cable bill every month. So like nice. People who talk shit about like the new digital way of getting media, I mean... It's
cheaper than cable.
I still just use Netflix and Hulu. I mean, that's just pretty standard.
It's 2018. Yeah. You don't need it anymore, man.
Yeah, I even have YouTube Premium of all things. They changed the name from YouTube Red. I don't know if I'm going to keep it, but Vsauce's show is really good. That's the one. That's the one good YouTube Premium show that I found. So yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I would buy it just for YouTube Music and to not have ads.
That's what I thought too. But to be honest with you. Google Play Music kind of sucks ass compared to Spotify, and that's what's really having me on the fence about it. Yeah. It's like, can I just get ad block or shit and get Spotify back or all that kind of stuff? So it's like, everybody, at the end of the day, and I think this is an overarching thing, everybody's trying to get you to look at their thing, because you looking at their thing is how they get advertiser money, whether that be a boxing match, whether that be esports, whether that be Netflix. So it's all tied in a neat little theme. Not really. But anyway, everybody wants you to look at their junk. Metaphor intended. So, yeah. So
I'm sorry. That was good.
So this has been the Buzzin podcast. I've been joined by the awesome Projekt. Projekt, go ahead and shout out your stuff while we're here.
Oh, you're letting me plug myself again?
Hell
okay,
yeah.
I'll happily do that.
Hell yeah.
You can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Th3_Projekt. Yes, I've made it poetic at this point. Yes, I'm going to continue talking about my stuff. You can also find me on twitch.tv/The Projekt. Just like my Twitch, minus the underscore. You can catch my show Texas Watch every Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time, because Texas time, bestest time. What's up? And also I host Overwatch Open Division. Typically North American games are every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time and then 4 p.m. Central Time. So go ahead and come out, check us out. We have lots of really cool up-and-coming talent. Some of these people that we see play are remarkable and deserve their spot, and they're going to quickly go from tier 3 to tier 2. So sure. It's really exciting.
Yeah, so that, hope you guys learned something. Check out the next episode. Hopefully that won't be a month away. I kind of like to keep each episode as opposed to just be like a every week thing right now, because obviously life is busy. I like to keep it more to kind of concise topics where it's like, oh, here's an episode where we talk about writing and anime, and here's one where we talk about esports and the future of internet stuff. So if you have any topic ideas, definitely let me know. I hope you learned something. Have a great day. Bye-bye.